we're gonna start right there at Crystal Skull.
Oh no.
and why and how it exists, and also because they're making another one. They're almost done with another one.
Oh, I know. I'm trying not to think about it because as far as Indiana Jones 4 doesn't exist. I don't know what you're talking about.
Kate Blanchett in a wig.
Nope.
With monkeys.
Sounds like a fever dream you had.
And Shia LaBeouf.
Definitely is a fever dream you had. I don't know what you're talking about.
And John Hurt.
Nope.
And maybe like...
You passed out watching Transformers and imagined a fourth Indiana Jones movie.
If only. If only. But yeah, Harrison Ford will be back. He's 80.
Yeah.
And I think they've figured out a way where he'll only have to be on screen for like 15 minutes. Because I think they're going to CG... I'm not trying to spoil anything, folks, but I think special effects will be used.
Yeah, especially for the action sequences.
Harrison Ford look able-bodied.
Contractually obligated to both be in for 15 minutes and be CGI'd.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so odd. Like if you're gonna force him to do that again at 80, either recast the role or just make a new thing. Like, I don't think it's out of Spielberg's wheelhouse to make something new,
Harrison Ford is a very surly, curmudgeonly...
I mean, make him the professor, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Give him Sean Connery's role in the third one.
That could work.
Yeah.
We're here today to talk about movies, and we started at the Crystal Skull.
Of course.
One of the best movies ever made or imagined. You're listening to A Little Too Quiet. It's the Ferndale Library podcast. It's brought to you by the Friends of the Ferndale Library. You have heard me talking to Simon, recurring guest. Welcome back, Simon.
Hello.
Pietro.
Hello, Jeff.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Pietro, you have chit-chatted with us randomly here and there whenever movies come up, so I detected a passion for cinema in you, as there is in myself, and I know for Simon, who develops our collection of DVDs and now Blu-rays. Simon?
Yeah, Blu-rays. Yep, we did finally get Blu-rays. Let me know if there's anything new coming out that you really want to see on Blu-ray, or like classics that are out on Blu-ray. We've got item recommendation forms for a reason. Let me know, because right now I'm just buying things that I can only get them on Blu-ray. So let me know what you want to see.
The more I learn about Blu-rays, the more I become familiar with the phrase 4K.
Right.
What is 4K?
Essentially just
4,000
somethings.
4,000 somethings.
4,000 somethings. I vaguely know it's about the number of pixels per something. I do not have a 4K capable TV, so I can't comment on if it's actually that much better or not. But I will say there is a very large jump between DVD and Blu-ray, especially if you've got, pretty much everybody at this point has a 1080p TV after 2020.
Sure. So I have something to confess, both of you. I am a film nerd. I'm a film geek.
Sure.
I'm a film buff. I'm a film snob. I care about this stuff. I really care about this stuff. I watch the Oscars. I invest in this stuff. And I guess I feel like moderately troubled by the state of movies.
Sure, same.
The state of the movies.
Same.
Right.
Anybody else feeling that? Anybody else an equally movie nerd here who is watching the Oscars with me? I'm going to stop talking before the playoff music comes.
Yeah, I watch the Oscars, and then I get upset about the Oscars, and then I turn off the Oscars. So that's where I'm at.
It goes on for so interminably long that it seems like a marathon of which I'm not usually interested in participating in, although my brother lives in Los Angeles, and he has done some commercial acting. And one year he was in a Samsung tablet ad that played during the Oscars like 7 times. So that's the one year I actually watched the Oscars all the way through. And I feel like I'm still watching it now.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's tell me about, like, when, our previous librarian who was here collecting the DVDs was also passionate about this stuff.
He sure was.
Indeed. would would talk rapturously about his heydays in the 70s, like being a ticket taker at a movie theater, which is a thing we used to go to. We used to go to buildings and pay money and walk into a room together. Nicole Kidman can tell you all about this.
In very awkward, stilted dialogue, yes.
What's the phrase about heartbreak?
Somehow heartbreak feels good in a place like this.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I saw she was kind of getting called out on like, why are you doing this, Nicole Kidman? And her response was, it's so true.
But like, here's the thing. Like, I really want to, I want to be on that wavelength. I want to agree with heartbreak feeling good in a place like this. I want to be at that level. And I want people to go back to the movies.
On that note, R.I.P. Main Art Theater in Royal Oak and the Film Lab in Hamtramck, which barely got a chance to spread its wings. That was actually the last movie I saw before the pandemic was at Film Lab.
That's like right at the end of my block, and I never went there, and I regret it.
Yeah.
That is another reason we're here. We lost the Main Art, which was in a nearby city, independent cinema.
Yeah.
Been going there for half my life, and now it's gone. It's literally gone.
Yeah.
Not even the building is there
It's
anymore.
rubble.
Right.
And that was really sad. I was maybe 2 weeks ago, I went to the Imagine Theater to see a documentary about the Boblo boat. And
Made by local filmmakers.
Yes.
yeah, and it's totally something that would have been at the Main Art.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was just thinking about that in the lead up to this and how sad it was that now Imagine gets to co-opt that. And to drive by the Main Art and see the rubble was just like heartbreaking.
Yeah. God, I think that was the first Studio Ghibli movie I ever saw in a theater was at the Main Art, and it was Spirited Away.
Oh, wonderful.
And I was very young and had to convince my parents to drive across the state to go see it because it was the only theater in the state that was playing it.
So you drove all the way from the west side.
Yeah.
A 3-hour
Yeah.
a 3-hour tour.
Yeah.
Literally.
I got family on this side, so it wasn't like completely like bananas, but yeah.
That might be a good time to just wax rhapsodically about anime, Japanese popular culture. I mean, I know I'm opening up Pandora's box when it's Simon.
Yeah. Man.
Was that like was that a formative moment, Spirited Away, or had you gotten into anime before that? Hayao Miyazaki, we should say, is the filmmaker.
Yeah. I would say it was a formative moment for me in terms of like watching standalone anime movies.
Yeah.
Because like at that point it was just Toonami after school, you know. Yeah, I still remember going to go see it, obviously, and then I think a couple weekends later it was the Cowboy Bebop movie. Same deal. Yeah.
Nice.
I went to see that too, and then my brother, who's a little more passionate about it, went to see it 4 more times.
Oh God.
In the theater, which is a thing we had to do before we could just download or stream.
Right.
You had to go back to the theater.
Yeah. No. And
we're not. Hold on. We're also not that old. It's just
I am not that old, but yeah.
Things have changed that much in 19 years.
Or in the last 2 years, really, even for that matter, to be honest.
Yeah. I still can't believe I saw the last Matrix movie like on a friend's TV and not in a theater.
Wow.
I saw every other Matrix movie in a theater, but not the 4th one.
Well, there's just something so special about that experience and the community and the communal nature of it. And especially going to see a horror movie and everyone's screaming at the same time, or a comedy and everyone's laughing. And a lot of that has been lost. And I don't want to sound like I'm too bitter about it, because I think there's a whole world that's opened up through the world of streaming that allows you to access things you wouldn't have been able to before. But at the same time, there is that nostalgia for being a part of the group and for getting the overpriced drinks and popcorn and everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we started the film club here at the library is that the members involved were missing that specific special moment of not being in a movie theater together, but the...
like communal viewing of something.
Yes, but specifically when you leave that movie theater with, if it's your date, your partner, or 3 friends, or 2 friends, or 4 friends, and you maybe go to a coffee shop, and then you start talking about what you just saw.
Yeah.
That urge to just talk about what you just, to process together,
Yeah.
is why we started the film club. And you you can't really get that when you're watching Matrix 4. What was it called again? Matrix Resurrections?
I think
That
so.
sounds right.
Most people would just absorb it on their television, and their only recourse, one of two recourses, might be to just go on Facebook and say, boy, howdy, I just watched Matrix Resurrections.
I will say...
As like a status update.
Yeah, I will say I did watch it with several friends on their big TV, and we like complained about it the entire way home from said friend's house. But yeah.
Pietro, did you see Matrix 4?
I, full disclosure, have not seen Matrix 4.
Okay.
There are resurrections, I will tell you.
I think I actually rented all the other Matrix trilogy films from the library and watched them, and probably over the course of 3 days about 15 years ago.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Matrix came out in theaters in 1999.
Yep.
I did not go to see it because I was probably too, full confession, preoccupied with going back for multiple viewings of a little film called The Phantom Menace, because I used to be a card-carrying member of a cult that refused to see any negative qualities about that film, and just liked lightsabers, and I completely missed The Matrix. But then I saw it on VHS, and I remember that feeling of, oh my gosh, I wish I had seen this in the theater. This is so amazing. Also, it's 900 times better than The Phantom Menace.
But The Phantom Menace did have really good Taco Bell tie-in toys.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I remember those. Yes.
Crucial.
Also, incredible video game came out of that.
Really?
The Pod Racer for
right.
N64. Yeah. And the Pod Racer, speaking of things that aren't around anymore, but unrelated, arcades.
Oh, yeah.
The arcade game version of pod racing, you actually got to sit in a pod and do that. Yeah.
There's something communal about arcades. You
Yeah.
might have 2 or 3 people crowd around you to watch you get the high
Do the
score.
thing, yeah.
We have, I should say, like, shout out to something like Discord, which you could actually watch a thing from a distance together if you so choose.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's mostly what I did in the early days of the pandemic with some friends of mine. We just watched stuff together on Discord. Like someone would pick a random Blu-ray that they had and be like, "Oh, hey." Yeah.
Spirited Away.
Yes.
That was a formative moment.
Yes.
Pietro, tell me about your movie life.
So I have an older brother, and he was a film major in college.
Cool.
So I think by osmosis, I absorbed a lot of like the canon, or I wanted to like understand the greater significance of Citizen Kane when I was, 11 years old and things like that. But I think for me, I can remember getting my first paycheck at my first job and immediately going to Best Buy and spending all of it on overpriced DVDs.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, A Clockwork Orange, and Donnie Darko. So that,
Not bad.
so that says a lot about the counterculture, anti-authority teenager that I was at that time. So yeah, that was some formative stuff for me there.
Yes. Donnie Darko, I have not returned to in a while.
Me neither. I don't know if I want to, honestly.
And I wonder if it's still profound or counter if it ever was.
Here's
So-
the thing. The director's cut of that movie is terrible. No offense, Mr. Director Man, if you're listening to this. But the thing is, if you watch the commentary on it, he's watching it with Kevin Smith, of all people.
No.
Yeah. And at one point, I think Kevin Smith forgets they're recording a commentary track for it because he just starts talking about how terrible the director's cut is to the guy. Wow. He's like, why did you edit this like this?
Nice.
Wow, that's kind of amazing.
Right?
Kevin Smith, 1994's Clerks, a breakout auteur of the 90s, a trailblazer of independent cinema of low budget,
Of hockey jerseys.
of hockey jerseys.
I still remember getting Mallrats from Blockbuster when I
Nice.
was like 15. Speaking of formative moments.
Yeah. Mallrats is probably the film of his that I have the closest relationship to.
Yeah.
For sure. I used to see Kevin Smith at at Washington Square Park when I lived in New York. And I remember always being like, I'm going to keep on walking.
I mean, like, all due sensitivity and respect to the dude, because I know he just survived a heart attack that was very scary to him. But I think also he had, I don't know. I've heard him on a lot of podcasts recently, and it does seem like he likes to hear himself talk.
A little bit.
What about the trajectory of his films now? Because I feel like he took a big kind of like veer off of the course. I haven't seen anything of his in years.
There's literally a new Clerks movie coming out, so he's veered back. But yeah, Tusk was wild. It's a fun movie to see in a theater because nobody knew what they were watching.
I've always been curious about Tusk.
Yeah.
And scared and confused.
Yep, those are some good emotions to have about it.
The one where they get like barricaded off and there's a lot of shooting that happens.
That's Red State.
That's Red State.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
I guess is also his other horror foray, but Tusk.
Tusk is the, I'm a Mac guy from those ads, gets slowly turned into a walrus.
Justin Long?
By a mad scientist, yes, thank you. Yeah.
That's the premise of the movie.
That is it. Justin Long gets surgically turned into a walrus. No spoiler alert, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, kind of after Cop Out in 2010 with Bruce Willis.
Right.
He's kind of...
literally called Cop Out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that reminds me of a new tangent, is that my brother and I were just talking about specifically the best winning Oscar films of the 90s. And what a weird decade that was if you look too closely at it. Now, however, you could say Silence of the Lambs.
Classic.
Great. But after that, it starts getting weird really fast, like Gone with the Wind. I'm sorry, not Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Dances with Wolves.
Oh, yeah.
Got it mixed up in my head. Like, they're both over 3 hours. They're both...
yeah, they're both not great. Yeah.
Not great. Dances with Wolves winning over Goodfellas. And then you look further and you look at Forrest Gump, and it hasn't aged well. Or you look at The English Patient, and who even talks about that anymore?
Yeah.
And then you look at Shakespeare in Love, and then you start to realize that it is the decade where there's lots of shady shit happening with Harvey Weinstein and all of that Miramax stuff, and it just feels like a tainted decade. And Kevin Smith was kind of in the mix of all that. So,
and everything that happened with, say, Fight Club afterwards, and The Matrix with red pilled, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Like so many people just missing the point of the movies of that decade too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Taking on a life of its own in the following decades, really.
Yeah.
Like, are you blue pill on this issue? Are
Right.
you red pill on this issue?
Which is wild for a movie written by two trans women. Like,
Right. A lot of people misinterpreted Matrix and Fight Club.
yeah, Fight Club written by a gay man.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's comedy in there that is not picked up on. Pietro, thoughts? Tell me more about living in New York.
Well, I lived there for 16 months.
Okay.
And I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with 5 other people,
Sounds right.
as one does in New York City. And actually, one of my roommates is an incredibly astute film buff. Like, he can tell you the day of the week and the date that movies have come out since the 70s.
Wow.
Yes. And people also thought we were twin brothers, even though our ethnicity and ethnic heritage is drastically different. So we worked together and sat by each other at work, and people would always be like, twins, brothers, and then we'd say no, and they'd say, oh, same milkman, or like same mailman. But that was a time in my life when I was watching a lot of movies, like kind of like you were talking about communally, with a group of 7 people. You put it on, and a lot of times maybe you just have it on to make fun of it, or something as background noise. And so it was like, that was like my college dorm experience, since I didn't have a college dorm experience when I was in my late 20s, living with a lot of messy men.
Sure. I think I had that too, I guess. Not entirely messy men, because there were messy women too. We were living in a co-op in college, and so there was this, I guess, frat or sorority sized house, but like full of like groovy granola hippies who are just like, this isn't anything, we're just hanging out together. And big old living room, and going to the local independent movie store and getting lots of Jim Jarmusch movies, and
Nice.
and just experiencing it together. So yeah. So we had HBO in the house when I was growing up. So
Ooh, fancy.
Indeed.
We had whoever lived. I moved around a lot as a kid, but in the house that I spent the most time in, whoever lived there before us had like bootlegged HBO.
Nice.
and they just left it when they moved out. So I had like green and blue fuzzy HBO.
That's another thing that we can now be nostalgic for.
Right.
Blue and green fuzzy channels.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, but when I was 5 years old, I was always asking my parents to play a movie instead of like a half an hour cartoon.
Interesting.
Granted, it was like only one of 4 movies, and I made them play those 4 movies ad nauseum.
Do you recall what they were?
Of course I do. Well, the 2 biggest would have been, remember I'm 5, would have been Spaceballs and the Three Amigos.
Nice.
And Princess Bride.
Okay.
And then probably a Star Wars.
Yep.
One of the Star Wars.
Nice.
So I don't know. I had a 90-minute attention span at least.
I wonder, what do you think that says about you, Jeff, that you were selecting that over the half-hour cartoon?
Well, those are very colorful, fun, and
definitely
fast-paced, like relatively speaking, fast-paced movies. So I think a kid can definitely lock into those. So I don't think I was extraordinary or anything.
Especially a Star Wars.
A Star Wars or, Mel Brooks is just whatever. It's not exactly highbrow.
Yeah.
But then, HBO is on and I get older and I see Quentin Tarantino movies before I'm old enough to really see Quentin Tarantino movies. Some Coen Brothers movies before I'm possibly old enough to see Coen Brothers movies. And then by the time Wes Anderson shows up, I'm like, oh, okay, so directors. Okay, directors are like stylists. I was starting to like pick up on that finally.
Yeah.
And I've been a nerd, geek, buff, snob ever since.
Yeah. Man. See, when I was growing up, Muskegon, it's a very, very small town on the west side of the state. Bigger than you'd think, but still pretty small. And if you are too young to drink and it is winter and you can't go to the beach, the only thing you can do is go bowling or go to the movies. So I saw like every single movie that came out between like 2001 and 2007.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
A very rare time for film.
Right.
Yeah, that might be an interesting era, or it might be a bad era. I can't remember.
It was kind of wild because I'm one of the only people I know that ever saw Layer Cake, for example.
Layer Cake. Daniel Craig's introduction to the world.
Yeah. Great movie, honestly.
Wow.
Also,
not familiar.
Yeah.
Also, who is in there being scary? Isn't it the actor who the second Dumbledore? Is he in there?
Yes, he is in there. It's not Christopher Plummer, is it? Is it?
Well, we're going to use our brains. We're not going to look it up.
Yeah, we're not going to look it up, which, this is a good time to plug that there's going to be a library-sponsored movie trivia event at 215 West on October 17th at 7 p.m. It's going to be horror movies. I will not allow you to look up answers on your phone, so get ready.
Links in the show notes. Notes.
Yeah.
Layer Cake is like Guy Ritchie-esque.
Yeah, without being a Guy Ritchie movie directly, I think. But I also loved Guy Ritchie when I was that age too, because like you were watching stuff on HBO, I was going to Blockbuster with my mother's card, and like I went through puberty kind of young, so I've always looked a lot older than I am. Except now, apparently, I get carded for R-rated movies.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. So I would just go with my mother's Blockbuster card and check out whatever.
Right.
Awesome. Did they really care though? Period.
We had some people that cared.
Really? I grew up down the street from a Blockbuster in the local strip mall, and I don't recall if I ever tried to like pull a fast one on them there. But I do remember wanting to go see Me, Myself, and Irene before I was of age. And my cousin and I lied about how old we were, but we didn't say we were old enough when we lied. So
oh no.
So we said we were going to see the Fast and the Furious. Or no, it wasn't the Fast and the Furious. The Gone in 60 Seconds. The
Nick Cage.
So we said we were going to see that, and then we saw Me, Myself, and Irene. And retrospectively, I think we made the wrong decision. So neither is really that choice of a decision, I guess.
Indeed. And while we're on the subject of sneaking into things, shout out to Cole Kidman's own AMC Theaters for letting an 18-year-old, my older brother, take me, a 14-year-old, in to see Half Baked with Dave Chappelle and just letting it ride.
Nice.
Yep.
Basically letting him count as my adult parental guide, I guess. And so That was a trip.
You mentioned Pietro at one point, like the counterculture teen that you were. Yeah. I snuck myself into Garden State.
Ooh,
that was my
very indie.
Yeah.
Yes, put the headphones on. The Shin song will change your life.
Yes.
Another movie like Donnie Darko, where I was like, this is so profound.
Yes.
It hasn't aged well. No. The soundtrack is still slaps.
Definitely.
Sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about how important soundtracks and scores are, and like how often I have the score from Cinema Paradiso in my head and Ennio Morricone movies, and how oftentimes, like we were just saying, the soundtracks age better than the films themselves, or end up being more, meritful than the movies themselves.
Yeah. Like the oh man, what is the name of that Jeremy Irons, Robert De Niro movie? In the Jungle, The Mission.
Oh,
Again,
right.
another movie where I remember the music more so than the movie.
Yeah, I don't even remember that movie.
Right.
I can think of what the cover of it looks like, but yes.
Because it's Morricone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like The Virgin Suicides, to me, that movie is, it's a fine movie, but both the Air score and the soundtrack are phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I learned later that there's a lot of screenwriters or just writers in general who write to music or will be thinking of what songs they do want to use for certain scenes as they're writing it.
Yeah.
And that was big. I'll go ahead and just continue to be a
Fun
geek.
facts. That came up in the Donnie Darko director's commentary, too.
Oh, yeah?
This is going to be me plugging, check out DVDs from the library and then listen to the director's commentary. Some of them are really interesting.
This is where I wanted Echo and the Bunnymen. And this is where I wanted Joy Division.
No, that does actually come up. There was a that Sparkle Motion dance scene. It wasn't originally going to be that Duran Duran song. It was like something even more obscure. But then he was like, somehow it was cheaper to get the rights to the Duran Duran song. And like, if it's got a 4/4 beat, you can kind of edit around whatever it was. And I was like, what?
Echo and the Bunnymen, Joy Division, Duran Duran, and Tears for Fears. Like, all in one movie, you have 4 incredible musical moments.
Soundtrack definitely aged better for Donnie Darko than the actual movie did.
Where you see all the characters in the movie in that opening sequence to Head Over Heels. That's classic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the director's cut changed the music cues, too. It's awful. Really? Don't watch it.
No.
Yeah.
Has that director done much in the interim?
He's done at least 3 other movies that I know of that I don't think I watched.
Yeah. Does anyone really care about the other ones, or is that...
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Confirms my suspicions then.
I'm wearing a shirt for Halloween. Not the holiday, but the movie.
You are?
Can we talk a little bit about horror films today?
Of course.
Pietro, you don't watch many of them?
I'm sorry that I keep on talking about my brother.
Yeah.
But growing up, he would make me cover my eyes during the scary parts of movies because I think he himself was a little bit of a fraidy cat.
Okay.
So he was trying to protect me.
Aww.
So I think because of that, I had an aversion to the films. And now, as an adult, I've been discovering like the quote canon of classic horror movies, and honestly it's been a lot of fun to to watch them in the last 6 years. And like discovering Halloween and Halloween 2 for the first time and Friday the 13th.
Okay, listen, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is a lot better than you'd think it would be.
Okay.
This is true. Now, Michael Myers is not in it.
Is it a Halloween movie? No. Is it a good movie anyway? Yes.
Okay. That's good to know.
They get to this moment after they quote unquote kill Michael Myers at the end of Halloween 2, where they're like, okay, the Halloween franchise will just become like an anthology. Each successive film, starting with Season of the Witch, will be like just a Halloween inspired horror story. And then everyone rejected it and hated it. They said, where's Michael Myers? And they brought him back immediately for part 4, unfortunately.
Has it been the same actor in every film?
No.
Okay.
It was the same actor for the first 2, and then they just got random guys for like the next 7-ish.
Oh, there's like 10 of them
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually just watched The Birds for the first time.
Oh, cool.
And honestly, that movie terrified me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Tippi Hedren, I believe, is the lead.
Right.
Let me be a nerd for a second and let you know that my mother has a cat named Tippi Hedren.
Aw.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
That's a freaky movie.
just thinking about that as being a very real prospect is like, wow, we would be in a lot of trouble if the birds decided that we were not important anymore.
Yeah,
they didn't like us.
That movie it has some really freaky sequences. I am always thrown off by how Jessica Tandy is supposed to be Rod Taylor's mother, and on screen they look like they're 10 years apart in age.
Yeah.
But the phone booth scene, the restaurant scene, there's actual just freaky deaths in that movie.
And, again, the importance of practical effects for how well a movie ages. Yeah, because, like, you look at something like Birdemic, and it's like, no, that movie looked terrible the instant it came out. But, like, The Birds is still... We're still watching The Birds. We're still talking about The Birds.
Right.
Like...
Sharknado.
Okay.
Which I only bring up, and then I'll let Simon talk, is like, there's this incredible fine line between The Birds high art and then into the B movie schlock.
Yeah.
Premise is one thing, but like execution is everything.
Yeah, execution is everything, but like I grew up watching Mystery Science Theater, which, if people haven't seen, is Midwest born and bred comedy show. Bunch of guys in Minnesota watching terrible movies on public access TV, making fun of them. And like, at one point during an interview about that show, someone mentioned the thing that makes a movie riffable, like watchable, like especially a bad movie, like a B movie or whatever, is that it's sincere.
Yeah.
And like, if everyone involved is like sincerely doing their best, sincerely cares about the project, like treating it very seriously, you can still watch it. And sure, it can still be bad, but it's easy to make fun of. It's easy to see the passion.
Yeah.
And like Sharknado and Atlantic Rim and like Birdemic are just not
missing something there.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember something changing when Snakes on a Plane came out.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, so this is ostensibly bad on purpose.
Right.
Can't be bad on purpose.
No, you can't.
It just doesn't work.
Unless, Pietro, you've got to...
Unless if we don't want to offend you if you really like Snakes on a Plane.
You know, that's not one of my favorites, I think.
I will say I did see that in theater, but that was part of the era of I saw every single movie that was in theaters.
I'll save you all 85 minutes. He says, "I'm tired of these snakes on this plane," right at the end, and it's not an easy sit. It's not funny.
No.
It's not scary.
Yeah.
The only thing I remember about that movie is Kenan Thompson having to land the plane and talking about how this was the part in the video game where he would always crash. That's the only thing that stuck with me about
I
Snakes on a
vaguely
Plane.
remember that too.
Same.
And Juliana Margulies from ER is in it for some reason.
Oh, yeah, I don't even remember that part.
So,
Yeah.
I saw a meme on the internet, which is a place where you find memes
Okay,
Yeah.
go on.
about people who really love spooky season and horror films and Halloween and just gothic aesthetics. Probably being an individual who was exposed to the quote-unquote Exorcist at age 5.
Oh,
Yep.
no.
I was not exposed to The Exorcist at age 5, but I had two older siblings who were left in charge of me, and I was 5, and I was at least in the room for a few minutes when they put on Nightmare on Elm Street. And folks, you've been listening to this podcast for a long time. You've gotten to know me. I think I turned out okay. If I could just say so. But it did scare me a lot.
Yeah.
And yet I keep coming back. I don't know why.
Yeah, I see. My first exposure to horror as a child was Scooby-Doo.
I mean,
Obviously, and then like the Universal movies. Yeah. But speaking of the R-rated restrictions at the Blockbuster near where I grew up, the first Evil Dead movie is unrated.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay.
Let's talk about this. Have you ever seen Evil Dead?
I believe so.
Okay.
It's been a while.
Okay. Simon, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I was way too young, especially for the first Evil Dead. I
Yeah.
really should have started on Evil Dead 2.
It seems like,
But-
I think everyone sort of has that, though. Like,
Yeah.
I remember watching The Exorcist with a group of friends when I was too young, and they fell asleep, and I was by myself, just like shaking in this room, watching MTV music videos until 3 a.m. is my only companion.
Yeah.
Well, MTV music videos, on a side note, could also be terrifying sometimes.
Yeah.
That's true. I'm trying to think of a good example of a
Oh,
terrifying.
I'll give you one. Genesis Land of Confusion with all the puppets. Links in the show notes, folks. Terrifying stuff. But Evil Dead, made by Sam Raimi, of course, Michigan natives. The film was probably worked on within our home state. Often probably edited here in Metro Detroit.
But they filmed it in Tennessee.
So it's like a half Michigan movie.
Yeah. Listen, there's several Michigan State outfits in that movie.
Indeed.
It counts. Yeah.
But you mentioned Evil Dead 2, which is in 87, and Evil Dead 1 is 81.
Yep.
And the second one is weirdly almost a redo.
Yeah, it spends like the first 15 minutes kind of covering the tracks of the first movie, but then it's like, no, we're going to go in a completely different direction now. We've got budget. Let's do it. But also, the first one is like just plain, and I don't mean this, this isn't a shot at their budget and their lighting. It is darker. Yeah.
It's darker in tone, it's darker in mood. Yeah. It's grim.
Yeah.
And the second one is kind of a cartoon.
Yeah.
In
the best way possible.
In the best way.
I think they called it Splat Stick.
There you go.
Perfect.
Even though it gets like, I rewatched it recently, having like I watched it like 3 years ago and then rewatched it again recently and thought like, this is disgusting.
Yes. But again, to speak to the importance of everyone involved caring is like literally that first Evil Dead movie, the final special effects sequence is done with like oatmeal, like instant oatmeal getting squeezed through a shirt sleeve. And like, it's still a great movie.
That scares me, honestly.
Yeah. Oatmeal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As someone who eats instant oatmeal in his car on the way to work way too much that I feel comfortable admitting.
Just oatmeal in the shirt sleeve. Yeah.
That thought is kind of haunting to me.
If it's Quaker Oats, then we can go into a Wilford Brimley tangent, bring it over to The Thing, which is another disgusting movie.
I literally just watched that the other day with some friends of mine that had never seen it. If you haven't seen it, Pietro, I'm not going to talk about what happens in that movie. But
it's John Carpenter, right?
Yeah.
I know that much about it.
And Ennio Morricone, our guy from The Mission.
Morricone, yeah.
Oh, nice.
But I think Jeff and I talked about when I mentioned how I just watched The Thing, that it's like just a perfect example of minimalism in every aspect. Like, the sets aren't too crowded. There's only like 7 actors. The score is just barely there, but when it is there, it's insanely iconic.
Yeah.
And like the main character, his entire thing is just, he's 35, he's a helicopter pilot, he doesn't like the cold, and the money's good. And that's it. And that's all you need, you know?
And he's got like a world-class beard.
Yeah, the beard is phenomenal.
The beard is just phenomenal. But a thing about going back to why we love the movies, why we love going to the movies, or why we love watching movies in groups is that when you, like Pietro, if you weren't sure you could get through Evil Dead 2 or Exorcist, if you watched it with Simon and I, or just watched it in a group, and it got to the scary, gross part, and we all screamed together, it's somehow endurable.
Yes.
And I don't know, the first thing that came to my mind is like a roller coaster, and like how weird and wrong would it feel if you just rode a roller coaster by yourself? Like the thrill wouldn't be there.
Fun facts, you can do that in Cyberpunk 2077. And it is as awkward and awful as you are picturing.
It's awkward. Yeah, I know. Like I've only watched a horror movie by myself once, and it was The Shining, and I was not old enough.
Yeah.
Yikes.
But I loved it.
Yeah. No, I'll watch some 70s schlocky horror movies by myself sometimes, but it is definitely better. It's also a good way, watching something with another person is a good way to make a bad movie bearable.
Absolutely.
Right. And memorable.
So like you try Paranormal Activity, good example. My mom went to see it at like 4:00 on a Sunday, and it was full of teenagers that were talking through the whole thing, yada yada. She hated it. I went to go see Paranormal Activity on one of its last midnight showings, and it was me and a friend and another couple that had come in. By the end of that movie, we were all sitting together and like freaking out. Yeah. New friends.
Paranormal Activity, I also saw in the theater at night with people, not that late, but late enough.
Yeah.
It's one of the few times, no, it is the only time, I came home from the movie theater and walked around my house turning on every light.
Yeah.
I needed every light on after that movie.
Yeah.
But it's because of how effective it was to be in a room.
Right, but you try and watch it now, which I say that, but then I'm like, please check it out from the library, please.
Also, check it out from the library. Yeah. Absolutely.
But have a group of friends and make sure it's 3 a.m.
If you watch it, literally with just 2 people or one other person.
Yeah.
And whatever you want. Have you ever seen those movies?
Paranormal Activity?
Yeah.
I can picture them in my mind, but I don't believe I've seen that one. I was going to say that I think I'm one of the last people that has not seen Hereditary, and I just saw it over the weekend.
Oh.
And that was a movie where at the end of the night, I turned off the lights and I was like, oh, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I need to turn these back on.
How did we not lead with that, Pietro? I guess we needed to talk about Nicole Kidman and AMC, of course, but
Naturally.
Wow.
So that really just like made my mind explode. And I saw Midsummer in the theaters at the Main Art, of course. And I did see some through lines between the 2 films, but Hereditary to me just engrossed me from the first 120 seconds and it never let go.
Awesome.
It was so good.
Speaking of your brother closing your eyes, I went to go see that movie in a group of 4, and I just knew ahead of time that one person wasn't going to be able to handle some of it.
Yeah.
And I had been mildly spoiled about some of the things that were happening.
Okay.
So I'm not going to say it on mic. I'm not going to say on mic what happens, but I'll just make a gesture that since this isn't a visual medium, I knew when this was happening.
Yep.
Oh.
So I squeezed her arm and said, "You'll want to close your eyes."
Yeah.
And she did, and she was grateful. So
I think since we can't see what I'm doing, I just went like,
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's also one of the only movies that uses like there's a specific tone that we can barely perceive, but it causes anxiety. I think that's one of the few movies to use that like really effectively.
the tension builds so well in his 2 films.
We were talking about Paranormal Activity, and that's an outgrowth of the phenomena of the found footage subgenre that Blair Witch launches, and you'll see lots of versions of that. It's the movie with the giant monster walking through Cloverfield.
Cloverfield.
Or Chronicle, or all those other movies where it's like, it's a camera.
Yeah.
you're in. But then we get into Hereditary, and we've now seen with the rise of A24, the rise of, I don't know what they call it, smart horror, or like...
Well, okay. Oh, no.
I was just trying to remember what it was called, like Hereditary or Insidious.
Here's the thing. Well, I'm going to say this like it's a
or
big...
Or the Witch, or the Lighthouse.
Yeah, I'm going to say this like it's a big declarative statement, and I could just be completely talking out of my butt and have no idea what I'm saying, but like it's like the same thing with certain aspects of publishing. The money is in like the big tentpole, like Spider-Man, Marvel movies, Star Wars, yada yada.
Yes.
So like I feel like a lot of the directors that would have made like what's that one that Jon Favreau did, that first one? Swingers, yeah. Like directors who would do something like Swingers or like the small budget, but
or even
still
Clerks or whatever.
Or even Clerks or whatever. They're kind of getting shoved into horror right now.
Interesting.
Because horror movies still make money reliably.
Right.
But, you know, like if I recall correctly, Hereditary wasn't even a horror movie in the first draft of the screenplay.
Well,
like
I think he had to pitch it as not a straight horror film. He said it was a family drama.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not incorrect to characterize
it's
it
not.
that way at all, I don't think.
Oh God, I'm now also remembering a coworker at another library I used to work at. I told her to watch Hereditary because I was like, this is one of the best horror movies I've ever seen. She checked it out, came back the next day, and was like, that didn't scare me at all. And I was like, what are you? What was your life like?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah.
Oh man. Have you no sympathy for Gabriel Byrne? You know what? There's a pun there that I'm not going to say on mic. But it's a spoiler. All right, so that's another thing is that this is on my mind too, is that Billy Eichner's Bros is like not doing well at the cinemas because ellipses, is it because it's a gay rom-com? Or is that also like, is it compounded? Do people just not go to see rom-coms anymore? Do people not go?
Our rom-com's dead. Yeah.
Our rom-com's dead. And then when you go back to our pal Nicole talking about heartbreak feeling good, I think that's exclusively for the big dramatic Oscar-y Cold Mountain movies when she's talking about, I feel drama, I feel heartbreak.
Right.
So I don't think people go see the rom-coms or the dramas. They're going to see Marvel and horror.
Yeah, I have several opinions about Bros that this could be its entire other podcast, specifically about the marketing that it's the first gay rom-com from a major studio. That's literally not true.
Right.
But anyway, crap, I forgot where I was
But
going.
I guess they have to say that in order to like make it seem like it's a big important deal that you need to go to the theater and see it.
Speaking about the streaming stuff you were talking about earlier, Pietro, like Fire Island was amazing. Fire Island was a rom-com. I would have gone to see that in a theater. You know?
That's right.
Yeah.
Was Boing Yang in that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to see that.
It's really good.
And it would have been great to see it in theaters.
Yeah, except I don't even think I can get it on DVD for the library because it was a Hulu movie. Womp,
Which
womp,
is
womp.
a whole other thing.
That's a whole other kettle of fish, yeah.
Right.
But I wanted to get on mic here today to just remind folks, as Mary Graham just said back in the office, that we the library, we are the free media place.
Yes.
Ooh,
not only free media place, but also, are you sick of things disappearing off streaming services randomly to never come back again? Guess who probably has the DVDs?
Yes.
We do.
There's some things that you simply can't find anywhere else too.
Yes.
I've found in the last several months.
Yeah. Oh, do you want to watch Joan Crawford's last movie, Trog? You're only going to find that at a library.
I think I found Last Exit to Brooklyn, the film adaptation of that. That was strictly a library only because I think it was a French. In France originally.
Yeah.
Or what if I want to watch Repo Man? It's here.
It's here.
And am I going to find it anywhere else? Who knows? So
that's how I watched They Live recently too, and that was.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to I haven't seen it in years. I'm just saying asterisk because you can't find it anywhere. Gene Wilder's Haunted Honeymoon is here in the building on DVD. You will not find it literally anywhere.
Right. So, please don't steal it.
Yes, folks, please. We're the free media place.
We're free.
We got to share
it. Back.
But that's the thing is that I like to say is like, oh, are you overwhelmed with streaming services? Do you not want to... Is it not in your budget to handle that? Well, you can still do the old-fashioned thing that we all used to do back in 2014. Yep. Wasn't that long ago? We'd get DVDs or Blu-rays. Yes. We'd put them into a machine.
Yeah. Or like if you... Honestly, I'm pretty sure either Jeff or I or maybe even Pietro, like if you're like, I liked these 5 movies, what has come out in the last decade that I would also like in this, You can't get that from a streaming service these days. There's the algorithm, but the algorithm, if you type any letter into Netflix, you will probably get Mean Girls as one of the first results. Doesn't matter what, After a certain point, you want to watch something other than Mean Girls, the algorithm's going to fail you there.
Truly. There's nothing that replaces human contact.
Right. Or laughing together or screaming together or feeling heartbreak together. This is why we go to the movies. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about horror movies since it's October. Halloween's coming. Wanted to talk about the horror trivia night coming up. I don't know. This is going to be so fun.
Yeah, no spoilers for questions.
I know. I was like, you should tell us a question right now.
Do we get like categories or anything?
Okay,
like that?
well,
is it eras?
Yeah.
So several of my friends like pulled me aside when I said I was doing this, and they're like, "You can be a little obscure, especially about horror movies." And I was like, "No, I won't. I promise. I'll stick to 80s slashers, Universal monster movies. We'll stick to things people have generally seen."
Right.
I promise. Now, if you want to get obscure about horror movies, please come talk to me.
Yes.
Ted Raimi, if you're listening, you should attend. And then just DVDs in general, which is something we're going to continue circulating. Also because not everybody has streaming services.
Right. And like
for everybody.
Who wants to subscribe to 7 different streaming services just to watch like a handful of movies?
Exactly.
Right. It's not that much different than cable at this point.
Right.
And you've been able to build with Blu-rays, new anime titles, new foreign titles.
Yeah.
It's been going great.
Thanks.
Pedro, did you have fun on your first podcast here with us?
I had a lot of fun, Jeff. You
should come back again soon.
Be my honor.
That's great.
Yeah.
Simon, thanks for joining us.
Oh, no problem.
I believe in the movies. I am a movie snob. As I said, geek, nerd. I care about this stuff.
Oh, shout out once again to Hereditary and its horrible Oscar snubs.
Oh, absolutely.
Speaking of why I get mad at the Oscars.
Yeah.
Which, again, a genre that's usually always overlooked.
True.
Yeah.
For the Oscars.
True.
Thanks for listening, folks. we hope you enjoyed some of this. We hope that we didn't come off too curmudgeonly, and we apologize for any tangents involving Crystal Skulls. We appreciate you listening to this podcast. It's called A Little Too Quiet, and it's the Ferndale Libraries podcast, which is brought to you by the Friends of the Ferndale Library. Go to ferndalefriends.org if you'd like to support this podcast. But remember to rate, review, subscribe, and tell your friends, especially if they love the movies. We'll be back next week with more. Thanks for listening.